We welcome you into a live edition of the Bell Ringers podcast. Ben Goldstein, Matt Brown filling in tonight for Colin Daly. And ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Schwarber is not going anywhere. He is back with the Phillies, 5 years, $150 million. And it is a great day to be a Phillies fan. Matt, feels good to be saying that.
It feels really good, Ben. I mean, if you're a fan of this whole city sports team, last night was rough, but today just kept getting a little bit better, trying to get back to where they were. You know, massive contract negotiation, massive agreement from the Phillies. Kyle Schwarber has arguably been the best Phillies player on this team since he joined back in 2022. And this is a huge deal that they had to get done. I'm really impressed that they were able to work this out really quickly. I didn't expect them to really take it. I didn't really expect Kyle to take long in his decision. He kind of knew where his market was. It was going to be around that 150 to 160 range. It was just a matter of if the Phillies were willing to give that fifth year, which they ended up doing. I heavily thought that if they gave him a 5-year contract worth around $30 million a year, he was going to come back to the Phillies, and that's exactly what happened. So I'm really happy this is happening because he deserves to probably finish his career here in Philadelphia. He has been maybe, I don't want to say the best signing in the Phillies history because you got guys like Bryce Harper and Zach Wheeler, and you can even say Trey Turner too, who have been probably a little bit better, and Roy Halladay, and all the great free agency signings they've made in the last decade and a half. But this is a really good move. This is something you had to do, and now you have a power bat in your lineup staying for another half decade here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Schwarber, 33 years old. This is likely the final contract he is going to sign, and it's well worth it. Last season, who cares about that 240 average? 56 home runs, the second most in the regular season in Phillies history, 132 RBIs, the most in Major League Baseball, and a 928 OPS. When he goes, the Phillies go, and he is such a leader in the clubhouse. It was just so important for the Phillies to bring Schwarber back, and they were able to do it. And this deal, I mean, I look at it, 5 years, 150, that's $30 million a year. And Colin and I spoke last episode about how, where we think we would kind of bounce away from Schwarber. And I mean, this is perfect for me. $30 million is exactly what we were looking for. We'll talk about some of the rumors that came out after about what some of the negotiating was. But 5 years, 150, kind of exactly what I predicted earlier in this winter. And like I said, if you get over 32 or 33 million, if it's a 6-year, you got to get out of there. But the Phillies were able to get exactly a perfect deal for both sides. I feel this is great.
No, yeah, 100%. This is exactly the line they wanted to stay at. It puts them in a spot to where they can still make some, other free agent deals, but it doesn't handcuff them to a point where they can't really do anything else besides signing Kyle Schwarber. I truly think they're still going to be in the pitching market for some of the available arms, some of the available starting arms too. Like not only just the relievers that they're definitely going to be interested in. I definitely think that there's a couple starters they could throw their hat into this winter. I still think they're going for more bats. I still think a right-handed bat is somehow going to be on this team come the start of next season. I don't know if it's going to come in free agency or if it's going to come from a trade. We're still expecting JT Realmuto. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, later. That's probably seems like what the next move for the Phillies is going to be. The entire winter, it's felt like Dombrowski's number one and number two things on his list were signing Kyle Schwarber, signing JT Realmuto. Once you got those two things handled, you could probably head off and do the other 5 to 6 things that you need to do. And it's okay to have those two things are the first two things. These are guys who have been with you through the core of this team. Kyle Schwarber has been to the playoffs every single year with the Phillies, and that's a huge difference maker. If you can't think about that, like every single time he has touched his field for the Phillies, they have been a playoff contending team, and that's going to continue with him as long as things go their way. And major injuries don't happen, but things go their way, he will continue to be great for this team. And a little thing that I looked into this right before we came on, the money that the Phillies spent for the 2 contracts for Kyle Schwarber, and you include this 5 for 150 and his previous 4 for 79, you essentially signed Schwarber when he was 29 years old to a 9-year, $229 million contract, which sounds like a lot. It is. It's a very big deal. And that puts you around the 25 and a half-ish range, right about there, which is honestly, for the production he's given you so far in the 4 years, I'm okay with it. This contract's going to get a little iffy. By the time when he is 38, 37, like at the nearing his end of this contract, the last 4 and 5 years of this, it's going to be a doozy. But I'm okay with the Phillies doing things like this because this is the team that they're in. They're in win now mode. They are in the mode of spending $350 million on their payroll. Because if they don't spend that kind of money, they're not going to be successful with the other teams that are going out there. We'll talk about another guy who got signed later to the Dodgers. Teams like the Dodgers, teams like the Yankees, teams like the Red Sox, the Mets, they're spending money in the upwards of $350 million. And if the Phillies don't keep up with that track, they're not going to win. It's just plain and simple. They're not going to compete. They're going to get out every year. I know they're going out already in the NLDS the last couple of years, but this is just how it's going to be. They are in win now mode when they signed Bryce Harper to that 13-year contract. They're still in win now mode right now. And this is the type of things you got to pay up right now if you really want to win.
Over 4 years in Philadelphia, Schwarber has hit 187 homers and is ranked among the league leaders in walks and on-base percentage. He was also named the NL Outstanding Player this season, voted upon by his fellow MLB players as part of the MLBPA Players' Choice Awards, and finished runner-up in MVP voting to some guy named Shohei Ohtani. His low batting average and strikeout percentage, those are all one thing, but like his track record, he has been one of the best sluggers in Phillies history, and these teams aren't what they are since 22 without Kyle Schwarber. I mean, you said it. You go back to 22, like earlier that year, there needed to be – that team was bad. And Schwarber was kind of, he was the one kind of providing some of that the little bit of offense that they had earlier in that season. And his leadership branched them into what they became. They went to that World Series. He has a home run in every single round of the playoffs. That is wild, and there's no denying he's a winner. 11 MLB seasons, 10 playoff appearances. Mm-hmm. So it is so important to bring Schwarber back, not just because of what he can do for you on the field, which is, of course, what we all see, but what he provides in that clubhouse is just as valuable. And that goes into this price of $150 million over 5 years. His leadership is so important that it's just invaluable what he can bring to a baseball club. And it is, I don't think they were able to there was no replacement for, 50 homers, 120 RBIs, and that leadership he was going to give you. Phillies had to do this.
100%. If it wasn't going to be him, you could have brought in an outside bat like a Pete Alonso, or, you could have swung big for a Cody Bellinger or a Kyle Tucker. Speaking of which, I don't know if they're really going to be out on Pete Alonso. We'll see what his number gets to for what he's expecting, but they could have gone for one of the other big bats like the Tucker, the Bellingers, the Bo Bichette's, even if they really wanted to go get another young big bat that was going to be another $300 million contract for him. They could have 100% did that, but I don't know if that's really what they needed. There's a reason that there were so many teams in on Kyle throughout this process. You saw the Pittsburgh Pirates were a team that were throwing off. I know you laugh and say that, but the Pirates were in on it. I give credit to them.
4 years, 110 was there. They made that deal last night as well.
I give them credit for at least trying to be in on a guy like him because they know he's a culture changer. He's someone who can, if they were able to convince him to play for them, that is someone who could instantly change their culture and their winning ways. A team like the Cincinnati Reds, his hometown Reds, were another team that were in on him. Another team that I feel like is itching for a veteran leader of the clubhouse, and that's who they're trying to get. Another team that was going to be really close on him, the Baltimore Orioles, another team kind of feeling like they need veteran leadership. They have a lot of young guys who have the talent, and they have a lot of, up and coming youngsters through their farm system, but they feel like they need that veteran presence. So he was a hot commodity for that reason. Obviously he can put up good numbers. He's going to hit 40-ish home runs a year as long as he stays healthy throughout the year. 56 is a lot. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to do that again. That was an unbelievable season he just had, but there's a reason that he was such a hot commodity from a lot of teams. Obviously, the top guys like the Bellingers and the Tuckers and the Bo Bichettes and even the Alex Bregmans, they're going to have maybe 3 to 4 suitors, and it's going to be the Yankees, Mets, Boston, and Dodgers. Like, there's a reason only those 4 teams are there because they're the only 4 teams that can offer those guys the $300 and the $400 million contract that they're asking for. Kyle not only is a cheaper option, but he's an option that just gives you veteranship that you really need. The Phillies have 3 guys, in my opinion. Well, technically 2 right now because JT Realmuto is still a free agent. But if they re-sign JT, they have 3 guys who could be the captain of this team. JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. If they were to name a captain, I think it'd be really hard. It probably would be Bryce Harper because he's, the showman and he's the guy who's done it in the clutch for you. And he's your 13-year guy who came to lead this team and make them better. Obviously, it would be him, but all 3 of those guys bring so much veteran leadership and so much of a captain presence. Kyle and JT are kind of like the older dudes, which crazy calling 34-year-olds older, but that's how some of it is for the guys who are in their 20s. They bring the dad presence and they bring the, it'll be okay, talking to guys, making sure everything's okay, going through the motion of a long MLB season, and they really value that. So I give credit to Dave Dombrowski. I understand that this contract may get ugly in year 4, year 5, especially if the Phillies don't win a World Series during the next few years. But this is chances you have to take. You need sluggers. You need guys that can protect Harper and can put up major home runs, put up major base hits when you need them to in the postseason and in the regular season. And that's what they did in Kyle Schwarber. I'm over the moon with this signing. It had to be done. You could not let him get to another team and do what he does somewhere else. If you want to be the best, you have to sign the best players. And in my opinion, that's what Kyle Schwarber is.
To contradict a little bit, as I typically do with you.
No, you're good.
So, I mean, you look at the other guys out there. You look at a Kyle Tucker. Look at a Pete Alonso. Look at, those are the 2 other big sluggers out there.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly younger. You could get more years for a similar average annual value of around 30-ish million. You would get him for more years. You get a little younger. You get a position player. It could still happen. Maybe it sounds like the Phillies are really willing to do whatever it takes. But a Pete Alonso can fit your first base spot. Harper goes back to the outfield. Kyle Tucker could fit your outfield hole you got going on. Schwarber, I've said this was the correct move by them. However, why not get a younger guy that'll last you for longer and could go out there and play a position in Alonso or Tucker?
No, that's 100% a real concern. And to me, in my opinion, the reason they were so high on Schwarber and why I think they wanted him back so badly is I feel like the Harper's days in the outfield are numbered. I think it's honestly 0 at this point. I don't see a world where he plays right or left field ever again as a Philly, as a major leaguer. I just don't see it happening. I could see him becoming a DH if they needed him to and signing a guy like Pete Alonso to play first base. But at the same time, they know what they're getting with Kyle. They're keeping the same chemistry around. They're bringing back is pretty much the same offensive core kind of guys that are going to run the team. And that's nothing against Pete Alonso. I kind of am off on Pete Alonso a little bit, and that's just the Mets hater in me that probably just doesn't want him around here, that he'll ruin everything. But the baseball fan in me can look past that, obviously. It's a really tough decision to bring outside help in, and they're very cautious with it. They were very cautious back in 22 when they brought in Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos. They knew they needed to get more bats to help out this lineup, and they didn't really know which ones they wanted to get. Obviously, one worked out, one did not. We'll find out what happens with Castellanos in probably the next couple of weeks. Could be honestly traded in these next couple of days before the winter meetings ends. But it's a tough decision bringing new guys in. You don't know how they're going to work out, and investing so much money in those guys, it's a really tough thing. I think Schwarber was the biggest or best guarantee you could get. You know exactly what you're getting from Kyle for at least the next 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons. You know he's going to hit 40 home runs. You know he's probably going to bat 230 to 245, but you'll be willing to take that because you know that's what your team needs. You need power behind Bryce, behind Trey, with JT as well. We'll see what happens at the other spots on who is going to bat up top with those guys, what kind of other trades or signings they're going to make, what kind of call-ups they're going to make from some of the young players. But I think just the easygoing, know what you're getting thing from Kyle was the big reason that they really wanted to get this move. Nothing against the other guys. And like you said, you obviously could have been in play for Tucker from the start, and that could have been your big signing. But I feel like that is just a big risk for team because a lot of those big signings don't work out. Everybody thought Anthony Rendon back when he signed his 10-year agreement with the Angels, he was going to be a surefire Hall of Fame third baseman coming off that World Series win. That guy barely even played 20% of his games. And that's nothing against Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is a very good player and could be a Hall of Famer and he's well on his way to being it with his numbers. But you just don't know what you're getting from the outside sources. You know what you're getting from Kyle. You trust him. You trust him to do everything he can to be out there for 150 to 162. It just has to be better in the postseason. A lot of people like to argue that this Phillies team is going backwards. I don't think that. I think a couple things could have gone different in that Dodgers series, and they're fighting for a World Series and maybe even beat Toronto. Who knows? Because the Dodgers will be the first one to say they didn't even play their best baseball this postseason, and they still ended up winning the World Series. A few things go different in that Phillies series. I truly feel like the Phillies could be in the World Series and maybe even win it. So while bringing this core back, I know angers some people, and obviously giving a DH $30 million a year is a really tough call. I still think it's the right move to do. It just gives you familiarity the rest of the way through this final leg of the veteran core that you have.
Schwarber is the 19th player in Major League Baseball to make at least $30 million a year. He's 33. He'll be under contract till he's 38, and he's going to be making $30 million a year to be a designated hitter. It's crazy, but when you look at the price of players now and what Schwarber is worth, it is worth it. So that's what the Phillies game with Schwarber. A report that came out from John Clark, the Phillies really went to bat to keep Schwarber. Source tells Clark the Phillies had to, quote, guarantee the 5th year instead of it being an attainable option year, and they had to increase the dollar number per season to $30 million to get it done and beat out other clubs. So kind of interesting report there. Phillies were looking for maybe a 5th year option, which I personally am a big fan of that. But Schwarber and his camp, they wanted the 5 years, they wanted the $30 million, and well, here we are. They got what they wanted, and Phillies, I mean, they got what they wanted too, but maybe could have gotten it a little cheaper.
No, 100%. For the longest time, I had kind of felt that when all that reporting was coming out on Schwarber, the difference was that 5th year. I think back when in March and February of last year, when the Phillies and Schwarber's camps were talking about an extension before the season started, I really truly think it was between a 5th year. I think Kyle has wanted this for a long time. And because we talked about it right this front, this is probably the last big contract he's going to sign. You know, he might get like a $15 million deal and sign 1-year contracts with maybe even the Phillies again when he's 30, 38, 39. Maybe go to other teams like the Reds when he's that old just to be a DH if teams need it, or other teams as well. So he still may get another paycheck or two. I'm not going to say he's not, but this is it. This is his big deal. This is the last one he's going to get. He just got the previous one with the Phillies, and we're going to be honest, it's a little bit of an underpay when they ended up getting him back in 22. You know, they didn't even pay $20 million a year for the guy. So the fact that they were able to do that in the first place, I still think that was an okay thing to overpay a little bit with this deal. Like I mentioned earlier, the total contract they have signed into is a 9-year, $229 million, call it $230 million deal. You're averaging about $25.5 million a year. That is honestly, for his price and what he does, a okay deal. You know, I know you're getting him on the back half of 30 now, but if he can still produce at this level, it is still going to be an okay deal for these next couple of years. You know, you have a tight window right now because guys are getting older. You're losing Zach Wheeler in the next couple of years of retirement. He's flat out said that. And Aaron Nola is probably on his last leg. Christopher Sanchez is in his prime right now as a pitcher, and you have a bunch of other really young pitchers that are doing well. You just traded for Johan Duran, great reliever. You have aging relievers as well. The core of the young Phillies daycare is nearing the free agency period. Alec Boehm has 1 year left on his contract before he is done. He might not even be a Philly by this time next week. Like they're looking at moving him right now, and we'll talk more about that later. But guys like Bryson Stott are looking for new contracts soon. Brandon Marsh. You got young guys coming up right now. Trey Turner and Bryce Harper are entering their age 30 seasons coming up, or 31 or 32, however they old now. Guys are getting younger, and the window is closing for this team, and they know it too. And that's okay. You know, teams go through these stretches where you have the highs and lows of your franchise, and you know it's tough times because only one team can win the World Series, but they know their window is almost closing. This is the best way to get to a championship, by signing Kyle Schwarber for the next couple of years now and getting there with the power that he provides.
A great deal for the Phillies, and another great deal for you is saving $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek, who sponsors the Bell Ringers podcast. SeatGeek, use code PhillySportsPorts, take $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Click the link in the description of the podcast. Download that app, and you can get it for a sports, concert, show, whatever imaginable. Go to the Philadelphia Wings game this weekend. Get your tickets on SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Report. Save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. PHILLYSPORTSREPORT. Hold the S. Save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Phillies today also announced that they have extended Rob Thomson, the manager, through 2027. His contract was up after the 26th year. Now through the lockout 27 season. Do you think that a lot of that went into this is because of we might not be even playing baseball in 27, so you want to kind of have a manager by that point? Like, what do you think?
No, that's 100% could have been a reason. You don't. I'm not a fan of free agent coaches or managers. Like, I hate when teams don't have more than 1 year on a contract deal for their team's head coach or manager. I'm not a fan of that. Like, you take care of your guy, especially when he is your guy. You're pretty much setting him up to fail if you go into seasons with 1 year left on contract. So I figured the Phillies would eventually, make a deal to at least extend Topper through 27, maybe even 28. And then you bring up that point about the upcoming lockout, which we're expecting next offseason. And I am fully in the group that it's going to happen. I don't know how long that lockout's going to last, but baseball is not going to continue the way it is right now this time next year. It's going to be a very dark day for the MLB coming up, and it's going to be a very dark day for the Phillies because if they were not to do this deal and extend Topper and just let him go 1 year in, if they didn't agree to a contract before that deadline, then you would be without a manager for who knows how long. Like, the last lockout went until right before spring training or in the middle of spring training back in March. Excuse me. And the season just abruptly just started in that spring training, and then a couple weeks later you were starting the MLB season. And if you didn't have a manager at that time, you would have been in so much trouble if you were the Phillies. So the fact that they do this deal now, it totally makes sense. You need to have years on your guy to make sure that things are good. I truly think Rob Thomson is the guy that can lead this Phillies team to a World Series. He's done it before. He's led them to the playoffs 4 straight years in a row. He's one of only, I think it was 3 managers that have ever done that. He has the second best winning percentage and second most number of wins since he took over on June 3rd, 2022. He is the guy that this group rallies behind. And I know people criticize him for moves he has made in the past. I have been critical as well. I don't think he's been perfect. I don't think any manager is perfect. I think managers have made plenty of mistakes, even the great ones, like the Joe Torres of the world. Like and I don't want to say Dave Roberts, but Dave Roberts has 3 World Series. I think I have to put him in that group of great managers now of all time. They all make mistakes. And yes, are we going to always remember Rob Thomson taking out Zach Wheeler in Game 6 of the 22 World Series? Yes. Are we going to remember, him benching Alec Boehm? Was that really a smart move? Maybe, I don't know. How about bringing Carlos Estevez back in Game 5 or Game 4 of that Mets series last year in the NLDS? Probably not the best move. But at the same time, there's only so many things he can control. These are a group of veterans that you're not going to bench every day. They're going to be wanting to play every single day. These are relief pitchers that you've used all year and you've, trusted them to get the final outs of the game. How is it Topper's fault that you put the guy in the right position and he gives up 5 runs in a postseason game? You end up losing. There's only so much that he can control with this team. And I know people are critical on the manager when teams lose. I totally understand. I'm totally critical. I do the same thing. But Rob Thomson is the guy that can lead this team to the promised land. I truly believe that. And this is just the vote of confidence that Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies organization is giving to Rob Thomson. They know that he can do this, and they're still trying to give him time. And they really hope that this up next season, 26, can be the year that they can do it. They have some more moves to make, but with Rob Thomson at the helm, I really think that the Phillies can do it.
So it's always fun when we do these live streams and some stuff kind of comes out in the middle of our stream. Some breaking news here. The Phillies have contacted the Washington Nationals about Mackenzie Gore. This comes from Talk Nats, which is a Washington Nationals publication. So Phillies checking in on a division foe, Gore. So kind of an interesting thing here. Phillies made the trade last year for Jesus Luzardo. This one, I mean, he has 2 years of control as well. So, doesn't really make a ton of sense unless they're not planning on re-signing Luzardo after the season. And then we kind of just do this lefty in division thing where we're just going to trade for guys, but definitely an interesting thing here.
No, 100% interesting. My only concern about this is I feel like a trade for Mackenzie Gore would force the Phillies to have to pay even more than other teams. Like, there's a big difference between I'll say the Mariners trading for Mackenzie Gore than the Phillies trading for Mackenzie Gore.
In division tax.
In division tax is 100% a real, especially in baseball. In division tax will 100% be a real thing. Do I think the Phillies could do a trade like this? 100%. I am fully in the camp that the Phillies are still looking for starting pitching depth. I know it sounds crazy because you have, when Wheeler comes back, you have a rotation of Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and presumably Andrew Painter and Taijuan Walker as well. He's still on this team for another year. I know you laugh and that, but it's true. He still is on this team. You still have 6 starting pitchers right there that are probably going to be on this team on opening day. 5, and then when Wheeler gets back, probably in late May, early June. Or who knows? That guy's a freak. He could be back by April. Who knows? That would be insane. But pitching is such a hot commodity in this sport. And I give this example of this past year's World Series. If you watch this past year's World Series, what was the number one thing you noticed in Game 7 from the winning team, the LA Dodgers? They used starting pitching every single out except for one out of the, what did they go, 10 innings? 11? No, they went 10 innings, right?
10.
Yeah, so that's 30 outs. Out of the 30 outs that they recorded in that game, 29 came from starting pitchers. They use everybody. And now I understand it's a Game 7 scenario. It's all hands on deck. You're using whatever arm you can to be in that spot. But they use 1 out from a starting pitcher to get a lefty out in like the 7th inning. That was it. Every other time it was going to Snell, Yamamoto, Shohei, Sasaki. Like, they were using the starters that they purchased and they put all their money into to get them, and Tyler Glasnow, sorry, I forgot about him, to get out of that situation. The Phillies realize that, and they need to do the same. They know that this rotation is going to look a lot different, in my opinion, in 3 years from now. I said it earlier. Zach Wheeler is on his last leg. This could have been a career-ending injury for him, and I'm thankful that he's still going to pitch this upcoming season and hopefully 27 as well. Aaron Nola is on the back end of his career. We'll see if he can bounce back this year. You mentioned it. Jesus Luzardo, he's only got a year left on his contract before he's a free agent. Andrew Painter is hopefully the future. We're hoping he might end up getting traded. He's a name that the Phillies have talked around for the past 3 years in trades. We'll see if they end up doing a deal with him in it. I don't really want them to. I think he's a really great pitcher, and I think he could be, a Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens level stud for this team, or Zach Wheeler level stud for this team, I should say. And then you have Christopher Sanchez, who is the only long-term guy on this team, and he's on a great contract right now. Thank God we have that deal with him and saving money like that. But this rotation is going to take a few hits these next couple of years, and it's going to change up. So I'm always interested to see them stay in the starting pitching market and just float out there and just see what's available. Like, I'm fully aware that it costs a lot to pay for starting pitching, and they know that too. But looking at guys like Mackenzie Gore, looking at guys like Tatsuya Ime, the Japanese pitcher that's coming over, that's getting posted, looking at guys like that, even the Zach Gallons of the world that are free agents, it's always a great thing to throw your hat in there and just know that you're always interested, because they know that, like, with a drop of the hat, things can change. And the better and more prepared they are, the better this team can be. Look at the Dodgers. They had an A and a B starting pitching team this past season, and it got them all the way back to the World Series. They literally had 5 guys who could be better than probably like half of the team's rotations in the league. But that's just what they do. They pay for starting pitching. They pay for pitchers they know can be in big spots, and it ended up working in their favor. And I think the Phillies want to replicate that going into 2026 and beyond.
All right, Dave Dombrowski spoke yesterday at the winter meetings, which, if you are not in tune with the winter meetings going on in Orlando, Colin and I will talk on Thursday post winter meetings, so make sure you check that one out when that goes out there. But we are keeping a running article throughout the winter meeting, so go over to phillysportsports.com and check that out with all of the constant updates. But Dombrowski spoke yesterday, and there were 3 or 4 main points. One of them kind of is dismissed. It was about Rob Thomson not getting contract extension. You mentioned Wheeler. One of his points, Wheeler started playing catch last week, which is pretty amazing. He had a blood clot removed, and now he's going out there and playing catch. The big one we need to really talk about is the mutual interest with Don Mattingly to be the bench coach for the Phillies. I mean, it makes sense. He's an experience. Phillies were looking for an experienced bench coach. I mean, Mattingly, a Yankee legend, still not a Hall of Famer, which is
I can't believe that.
which is interesting.
I really thought the other night he was getting in. I know Jeff Kent was like a guy that everybody was liking, but I thought it was going to be him and Mattingly that he was going to get enough votes. It's crazy.
Well, if Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer, I think it's pretty safe to say that Chase Utley is going to have a plaque up in Cooperstown because when you compare the stats, I mean, Utley outside of the career homers is almost better in every single category. Anyway, it's a different discussion for a different time. But Donnie Baseball, longtime Yank, the manager of those great Dodger teams in the late 2000s, of course, was the Miami Marlins manager when they weren't very good, but didn't really have much to work with there after everyone kind of scattered. And then, bounced around a couple bench coach teams. It was with Toronto last year, stepped away from the Blue Jays, now comes to the Phillies. And when you go and get an experienced guy like this, to me, it feels like they're lighting a fire under Rob Thompson's butt a little bit, saying, hey, we just gave you this extension, but if things go wrong, we got a guy that we can easily replace you with.
No, 100%. And you feel that way a little bit, and I can understand where that's coming from. I do think it's a move that Topper is okay with too, because even he knows that like this is his last job as a baseball guy. You know, he's not going to be accepting a job anywhere else once this is over with the Phillies. And it doesn't shock me that a guy like Don Mattingly is coming to the Phillies organization. If for those of you who don't know, his son Preston Mattingly is the GM of the Phillies,
which is crazy. Like that, your son is very high ranking in the organization that you are now with. Like it's just like your son is hiring you.
Yeah, essentially. Which you may say, what does Preston Mattingly do? You know, he pretty much is Dave Dombrowski's right-hand man. He does a lot for this organization and, you know, works on trades and talks to people. He's a big deal. I understand there's a president of baseball operations. Dave Dombrowski is the guy making moves. I understand it. But Preston Mattingly is just as important to this organization as Dave. But, you know, so it doesn't shock me that Mattingly, you know, is doing a deal like this. He was just in Toronto this past year. In the World Series, I believe in the same role, if I'm not mistaken, maybe an associate head coach or something like that. I don't know exactly what his role is, but he was an assistant on John Schneider's staff in Toronto, you know, went to the World Series this past year, brings that mentality and leadership. And I can understand where you're getting at with Topper, you know, lighting a fire. But I truly think that it's kind of a helping situation a little bit too. It just gives you a different point of view, a different eye in how would you do this thing? How would I do this thing? You know, maybe we can find a way that works better. Maybe he could show some things. He's been around baseball a long, long time. So I don't see this as a bad thing. I see this as a thing that can only help the Phillies, in my opinion, in the long run. Maybe it'll turn into the Phillies are down in the division like 6 games and everybody's chanting fire Thomson and Mattingly, hire Mattingly. You know, that's the crowd of the roar of the crowd. Come July, I don't think it's really going to come to that. I think they have the staff that they really like, and I just think Mattingly really helps them overall.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that this could be, you know, maybe a little something.
I could see that too. It 100% could happen, but I don't see it the way that I think Topper honestly is encouraged to them to make a signing like this because I think he just only helps the staff get better and it helps the team get better.
Dombrowski also will not answer the question about the Phillies' interest in any Japanese free agents. He did say they could have a very good pulse on that market. This comes after, I mean, you mentioned earlier the Ime, can't say his first name. You got what's his
name? Tatsuya Ime.
Tatsuya Ime, the starting pitcher out of Japan, and then also came out about here we go. You ready? Kazuma Akamoto.
Yep, Kazuma Akamoto.
There we go.
Akamoto is, I think, ATO. It's OTO.
Moto.
Yes.
All right, so Phillies have interest. He's a corner infielder. So Phillies also have interest in him. So there's 2 guys out of Japan that the Phillies. Phillies historically haven't had any Japanese guys really, and now have interest in 2 of them. Ime said that he wants to beat the Dodgers, so you know the Philadelphia is certainly a place he can come and do that. But Dombrowski kind of didn't really show his cards there, which is smart. But hey, Phillies are showing some interest. I mean, we talk about the starting pitching, corner infielder. A Bohm trade could come, so we'll see if anything really comes of this. But Phillies, why not?
No, 100%. The Akamoto deal could or will be a lower tier value deal. Kind of, it's going to be about like a 5 for nothing more than like 80-ish, maybe 90 mil. He isn't getting, he isn't getting much more than that. Ime is going to get a decent deal. He's probably going to get about 20-ish to 22 to 25 a year, depending on how because teams just value starting pitching so much. So that's why I'm really not sure that they can get a guy like that. It's going to cost them a pretty penny to get him. But Akamoto, he is someone who really interests me a lot. He I think would bring a really good spark plug to this team. They're really interested in a right-handed bat, not named JT Realmuto, because they're assuming JT's already coming back. They really want a right-handed bat behind Bryce Harper. And could he be someone like that? I think so. But it does bring the end for Alec Bohm. And maybe that's a better thing. I really don't know. My opinion on Bohm is just so I just feel like they're heading towards a divorce. Like, when you're young, Ben, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but I've seen people who are just ready to move on from each other in relationships and stuff like that. It really feels like that the Phillies and Bohm are just heading towards a divorce, a breakup. The situation just isn't working well with the two of them. The past things that he has said and done, it's not really that really as big of an issue in my opinion for them, but him next year being a free agent, they feel like they want to cash in on him. They didn't do it with Ranger Suarez, and I understand why they didn't. They were in a playoff push, and they really felt that they had the best rotation in baseball when Wheeler was healthy, when Wheeler, Luzardo, Sanchez, Ranger, and Aaron Nola. That 5 was ridiculous. They had the best rotation in baseball when all the 5 of those guys are healthy. It didn't work out that way. Zach Wheeler went down, and it really worked in their favor that they didn't trade Ranger Suarez because they needed a guy like Ranger for the postseason when Wheeler was hurt. So I understand why they didn't trade Ranger at this past year or at this past deadline. I don't really know the same can be said for Alec Bohm. I just think they're heading towards a divorce. I think it's the best interest of them that they can get the value they can now, because I don't personally see them signing Bohm for the 22.5 to 24 that he's going to ask for next year when he becomes a free agent. And I think right now, even if they can package him with some other prospects and get a guy maybe like a Joe Adell, I've seen that name thrown around. I don't know if you can really get like a Stephen Kwan kind of package done with him involved. I think you would need a little bit more. It's a really tough situation that they're in with Bohm, because I don't know what you really don't know what his trade value is. They tried trading him last year, and they asked for Logan Gilbert from the Mariners or Luis Castillo. They were asking for starting pitching that the Mariners were never going to give up. So I really don't know what Bohm's market is. You will know more the more things grow. If they sign Akamoto, then you're going to know that they're really heading towards a divorce. But I honestly feel like they're going to do that Bohm move first before they make that signing, because then everybody's going to know you're handcuffed with Bohm, and then you're going to have to trade him. So it's a very tough situation they're in right now. I know for a fact they want a right-handed bat, and I don't know if they're going to be able to spend that much money to go get a guy like Pete Alonso to be the right-handed bat and move Harper to the outfield, or if they're going to spend money on like Akamoto, maybe get like a Ketel Marte in a trade. That's someone they've been linked to as well. Maybe you can include Bohm in a deal like that, but it just feels like they're moving in different directions right now. Bohm and the Phils and the Japanese players, they are great, and they're great. Honestly, the money is a great deal for them as well. And the Phillies have never been known to sign guys like that, but when they don't want to go to the Dodgers and they want to be their own guys, that's when the Phillies need to swoop in and sign guys like that.
Well, you mentioned a couple of possible trades. Let's talk about that. What is next for the Phillies? JT Realmuto is on that list. Ketel Marte, they're rumored in trading for a couple Japanese guys as well. And Rob Thomson just said, we don't like the phrase, quote, run it back, because you never do. There's always going to be changes on a year-to-year basis. So, I mean, take from that quote what you want. It doesn't really sound like much to me, but maybe, could underline a possible trade here coming with the Phillies. Ketel Marte would be a lot of fun. Do the Phillies afford a guy like that? Could they trade for a guy like that? They're going to have to trade some top-tier starting pitching, it sounds like. And Joe Adell was a name that you mentioned, a name that I really like, out of Los Angeles Angels. So what do you get? What I mean, it really just now the attention for me just turns to JT Realmuto, and then Nick Castellanos needs to get traded as well. So a couple things that the Phillies will be doing here, and then So, what are your thoughts? And then we'll get into Edwin Diaz, and we'll wrap it up.
So, like I was mentioning before, Ketel Marte pretty much seems like a guy that the Phillies are looking at. We have a trade, actually. Nothing crazy. Vaughn Grisham.
Yeah, Angels just traded for Vaughn Grisham with the Boston Red Sox. So
Vaughn Grisham, the man who ended the Brave season back in 2023.
yeah,
Matt
I
Strom.
mean,
I don't know if you guys remember that series. Oh, so
yeah,
good. Sorry, I had passed and just blinking on my phone whenever
yeah,
something
I
comes
just
up.
saw that as well. But I mean, hopefully that's not that's their third baseman because you get
Yeah,
Alec Bohm as well. So
yeah, maybe true. No, Ketel Marte is definitely someone I think the Phillies are going to keep a close eye on this year throughout the winter. For some reason, Arizona is trading him. I really don't understand it. I don't know why they're willing to give up such a great contract. I understand he's 32, and it's kind of the same situation as Kyle and Bryce. Like they're entering their back ends of their career. They're no longer going to be, MVP. Maybe they might still be top tier guys, but you don't know if they're really going to ever be, number one at their position guys anymore. And they're still getting paid big money contracts. I get it. But he is on such a great deal for you, and he is such a great commodity, a switch hitter as well. I love me a switch hitter. I truly do. I think it's such a great thing when you have a switch hitter in your lineup, and having a guy like Ketel at the top of your if you could make a trade for Ketel Marte and roll out in some type of order a top four of Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Ketel Marte, Kyle Schwarber, that's a legit top four. That is competing with the Dodgers level of top four right there. So that's a really big move they can make. The only problem is it's going to cost you to make a move like that. Um, it's probably going to cost you at least one of Aiden Miller, Andrew Painter, or Justin Crawford. I don't know if the Phillies are really willing to get off any of those guys because I truly feel like the answer to trading Alec Bohm in a few years is through Aiden Miller. Now, what do you do if you trade for Ketel? Is he playing second base? You would assume yes. Who plays third base? You got a guy like Bryson Stott still. Are you willing to move him off? That's Bryce Harper's best friend. I don't know if you're really willing to do that. I think in that scenario, if you keep Stott, he probably plays third base next year. And then you reevaluate the following offseason with Stott. And if Aiden Miller's ready, maybe he comes up and plays third base. And you roll out an infield of Harper, Ketel, Turner, and Miller going forward. Justin Crawford, everybody assumes he's going to be the starting left, center, right fielder in 2026. I'm of that opinion as well. They have spoken highly about him every single time I hear anybody, Dave Dombrowski, Preston Manning, anytime they talk about prospects, Justin Crawford has been talked about as the next starter for the Phillies in the outfield. And with the lack of starters that they had, we're assuming that Nick Castellanos is not going to be on this team. It has been told that he's either being cut or traded before the season starts, and it looks like it's heading that direction. You only have one guy in your outfield right now that is not a free agent or assuming not going to be here in Castellanos, and that's Brandon Marsh. So you have two spots to fill. Right as of right now, you have two spots to fill in your outfield. You're assuming Crawford's going to be one of them. They're still looking at guys like Harrison Bader to be a right-handed bat. The right-handed bat pool is really thin right now. And so if you were to make a trade for like Ketel Marte, I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Lourdes Gurriel is someone who they could ask for in return, another right-handed bat for their lineup. It's a really interesting situation they're in right now. We talked about the Japanese players. Akamoto is most likely going to play third base if they sign him. That gives you the right-handed bat you need and gives you another infielder, and then you can trade Bohm for another guy. I said Joe Adell is another one who is someone everybody thinks is on the move this offseason. He could be a corner outfielder for you. It shouldn't be the end-all to get him. Probably like a Moises Chase, an Alec Bohm, maybe like Keaton Anthony, some mid-tier players in there to get a guy like Adell. Could even get guys like Reed Detmers back in a deal like that. Try to get some extra pitching in there as well. So I don't know what direction the Phillies are going to go in because I know for sure the next move they're probably going to make is one of two things. It's either trading or cutting Castellanos or signing JT. That is probably going to be the next thing they do before they do any major trades. Dave Dombrowski is also known to make trades that nobody even thinks of. I, under the circumstances, had no idea Jesus Luzardo was available last offseason. And then he goes out and trades Starling Cabo for Jesus Luzardo. And when that trade happened, I thought that was a great trade. A guy with 2 years control, trading an 18-year-old shortstop that's probably never going to see this team he's not going to help this core, and you're getting a low tier number 2 pitcher that's going to be your fourth starting pitcher in your rotation. And he was such a great fill for this team this year. He was probably their third best pitcher down the stretch. So it was great to see the trade like that. So you feel like he's just going to make a move out of nowhere that nobody expects, and it's going to fill his team out really well. I don't know who that's going to be. We'll see as it goes on. I didn't even mention guys like Luis Robert, who feel like he's been a Philly. Yeah, I know. I'm on the same boat too. I just feel like his price tag for a trade is too much for the risk you're taking with him as well. I've really never been a fan of his in the first place. And I know you were desperately in need of a right-handed bat. I just don't think that's the answer you want to go towards. So it's really interesting how they're going to handle this. In my opinion, I think Realmuto is the next guy they're going to go for. If they can save money in free agency, they'll get another right-handed bat in free agency like a Bader or a Akamoto. I think if they're going to get pitching, it's going to be through the trade market. I don't think they're going to be able to afford what some of these other teams are going to pay for pitchers. It seems like Ranger Suarez is not coming back. He's going to get, my God, his contract is going to be ridiculous. I don't know what team is going to pay for him. I'm begging he doesn't go to the Mets. But he is someone who I would love to bring back, but it's just not going to be in the cards for them probably. They're just going to take the draft pick and move on. But I could see them just getting a few relievers maybe on the cheaper end, nothing more than probably 7-8 mil like they did with Moreno last year. Just hope it turns out better. But I think if they're going to get a long-term starter, it's going to be someone in the trade portal and trade vines that you really haven't heard of, or just someone you don't think to expect to get traded or thrown in on another potential deal like Ketel Marte. So one of the next 2 moves, in my opinion, will be Nick Castellanos or JT Realmuto. Those will be the next move that the Phillies make.
According to Michael Marino, who is a national MLB reporter, he doesn't have any exact affiliations listed, so I'm not really sure how valuable this report is, but I mean, we'll go with it. Last night, the Mets submitted an offer of 3 years, $120 million range, but unclear if that was their final offer. So if this is true, which I don't know who this guy is, Michael. I mean, he's got 14,000 followers. So doesn't have it. I mean, he's followed by Jason Stark.
Yeah, it seems legit. That's it. Yeah. So they were in on a 3 for 120 range for Schwarber, which puts him at 40 a year, which is a lot of money. It's well above the AAV that he agreed with the Phillies. But again, I don't think he really wanted to leave here in the first place. And I really don't think he wanted just to be a free agent again at 36. I truly think he wanted the longevity in a deal that paid him a well-respected salary. And I think 30 mil was about that range. And I think the 5 years was the range that he wanted too. He could have cashed in for way more money, but I just don't think that's really what he wanted to do on this contract.
I think it was a fake report.
Was it really?
Yeah, I think so. I just looked up, is this real? And everyone's like, no. Never mind. Anyway. Speaking of the Mets, Edwin Diaz is leaving the NL East, which is great for us, but he's going to the Dodgers, which is really not great. Last year, 1.63 ERA, a .87 whip, 13.3 K per 9, 28 saves. He has historically either been horrible against the Phillies or absolutely dominant against the Phillies. As of recent, he's been very good against Philadelphia. 3 years, $69 million, the biggest contract for a reliever. The Dodgers doing Dodger things.
So I've seen so many people crash out and saying, oh my God, the Dodgers are still ruining baseball. And I understand why you're upset that this is happening. It feels like the Dodgers just sign everybody. The thing that makes me upset is, and what I think the big problem is, I have no problem with the Dodgers going out and signing Edwin Diaz. I think almost every single team in baseball could have given Edwin Diaz the same exact contract for the same exact years and been exactly on him. What makes me upset as a fan, and this is where I see the problem, is the Dodgers can do this while also last season giving Tanner Scott a 4 for $72 million deal. And just, every offseason it feels like they can sign the top reliever and have no penalty because of the Dodgers. That's where I have issues. There's a reason that teams don't take chances on a lot of relievers or a lot of pitchers on a lot of long-term deals. And it's because if they mess up on one contract, they're screwed for the entirety of that deal. Take the Rockies for Chris Bryant, for example. The Rockies haven't been relevant in a decade plus. They haven't been to the playoffs in a decade plus, and they really haven't been relevant since the early 2000s, late 90s. And it's because they're a small market team. I get it. They really can't spend that much money. Well, they can, but they don't prefer to because they don't get enough fans and bring enough in, so they don't want to spend. And when they do sign free agents like a Chris Bryant, it is a tough call for them because they lose out if they don't hit on that guy. The Yankees and the Dodgers and the Mets, and I even throw the Phillies in there too. The Phillies signed Nick Castellanos, and they're able just to get off him this year like nothing matters. Like we are fortunately able as a larger market and a larger spending team to be able to afford mistakes. A lot of young teams can't afford mistakes. Small market teams can't afford mistakes. There's a reason that Detroit is trying to take Tarek Skubal right now. As great as he is, and he's the best pitcher in baseball, in my opinion, if they give him that long-term deal and 3 years in, he blows out his arm to Tommy John and he's never the same pitcher again, the Tigers are going to be irrelevant for another 10 years. It's just how they are, unfortunately. And I do think things need to change a little bit. I do think that you need to incentivize spending in smaller market teams and not letting the top free agents go to every team each year. And I would love a world where they can be in harmony with the top teams not being able to pay for as much money and spend as much money as they do. But the players are never going to take money off the table from these teams. They don't care if they go to the Dodgers and get all this money, like a Blake Snell, like a Glass now. They don't care if this happens. They will go and get as much money as they possibly can. And I really don't think it's that big of an issue and a problem in baseball. I just think that being able to get off mistakes is a thing that I don't love, but that's just how it is. I'm glad that Edwin Diaz, he's out of the Phillies division now for good. We'll see how great he is with the Dodgers. I think that's a great signing for them. It's exactly the kind of piece they needed. I still don't think the Dodgers are done. They have so much more money to spend, and it's going to be a frightening year in 2026 for the Dodgers and as every other team in the National League, because I think the Dodgers are going to be a serious threat to go back for the World Series.
Yep. Well, Phillies will have to do their counter, and we will see what they do the rest of the way. Winter meetings continue through Wednesday. Matt, thanks for hopping on. Thank you all for watching and listening to the Bell Ringers podcast. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring as well. Colin and I will be back on Thursday to recap the winter meetings. And if anything happens tomorrow, we'll talk to you then. So we'll leave you with the newest signing of the Philadelphia Phillies. Thank you all for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.
1-2. That one's drilled deep to right field. He has done it. 4 home runs in a game.